Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense is a series of shows featuring interviews with interesting people in our area that will help us learn in a clear, concise, and direct way who these folks are, what they do, and what's making sense to them and what doesn't. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing Tom Patton, who is an Avon Lake businessman, previous owner of Beach Park Station, and board member of the Beach Park Railway Museum.
Thank you very much, Rudy. It's a pleasure to have you here at the new Beach Park Railway Museum, located in Avon Lake, at Beach Park Station, Stop 65. We are just north, the building just north of the Avon Lake Post Office. You find us by going to the most people in the area would know as the old Avon Lake Shopping Center, across the street from the power plant, which will be decommissioned next April.
Understand.
Okay. You can find us by looking at the Lakeshore Electric baggage car number 38, which is in the parking lot out off of Lake Road. Come back and visit us. We're looking to open up in spring. We came to Avon Lake in 1976 because our children were just entering school and we were drawn here by the school system. We had an office for 10 years in Avon, and we outgrew our space, so we were building a new professional building behind our shopping center. We ran into a snafu, just paperwork, and even though we were under construction, we had to stop construction, and we didn't know how long it would take before the city approved new plans. Again, we were really outgrown our space. We had 54 people in 5,000 square feet, so it was a little rough. At that time, the Sparkle Market in the old Avon Lake Shopping Center closed and the facility became available for sale. We purchased it because we wanted the building, the old Sparkle Market, which we gutted and turned into our offices. That was back in 2000, and we opened our office here in Avon Lake in early 2001. Unfortunately for us at that time, in order to get the building that we wanted out front, we had to buy the whole shopping center. So
I see.
So we had no interest in the rest of the shopping center, but we owned it. Well, being a history nut, I started to learn about the Lakeshore Electric Railway, and that the building that the main building we had just purchased had been the Stop 65 station and car barns. So I started reading about it, learning about it, meeting people that were interested in it, and more importantly, collecting. I collected a lot of photos, postcards, memorabilia, and it turned into a big collection. So I think about 7 years ago, I decided to publish the images and tell the story about the Lakeshore Electric, because I thought other people in the area might be interested in it, as I was once I learned about it.
Uh-huh.
Being here from '76 until 2001, I didn't even know why Electric Boulevard was called Electric Boulevard, and I hope everybody else out there knows that it was actually not a road. It was track. It was double track, going from Cleveland past this main station and on to many other locations, which we can get into in a little while.
Okay, how long did the railway last?
The railway
Operating.
Thank you. The railway lasted much like interurbans throughout America. Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and probably Pennsylvania were the the key locations for interurbans, but they were everywhere in America, because you have to remember there were no roadways to speak of. There were no paved roads, and so you went from making it being easier to travel in winter when there was snow to being able to travel from in rural communities at 60 miles an hour. It was, think about it, it was just an amazing, it was a sea change. And that lasted until automobiles and roadways became the norm. And in the case of the Lakeshore Electric Railway, it was officially 1901 until May 15th, 1938. At that time, it had closed up. A bus line continued the same routes, but the Lakeshore Electric Railway filed bankruptcy and was placed into receivership and closed and was dismantled.
Okay. You mentioned that it served the purpose of transporting people. Did it serve other purposes as well, in addition to being just for commuting?
Absolutely. It was a huge opportunity to bring information from the major centers. To give you an idea, people in Avon Lake could now receive newspapers, Cleveland newspaper, Toledo newspaper, Detroit newspaper, every day. They received their news immediately, which they had not done before. And also now they could get their goods to market in a very prompt and efficient manner. And Avon Lake, as you know, is basically an agrarian area, so they could send their produce out, they could send their fish, ice, and probably in Avon Lake the most important thing was the grapes. You're moving them in the baggage cars, which were the truck of the day. You now joined the big cities and the rural areas.
Understand, so it helped the farmers as well as commuters to get back and forth. The other thing I was curious about was you mentioned that it went from Cleveland to Avon Lake, and could you tell us a little bit more about where the train actually ran?
Absolutely. The Lakeshore Electric itself was the amalgamation of five electric railways in this area. We're talking about, and I could list them, but I think we'll get into that later. The main route was Cleveland to Toledo. However, it hit so many points in between, and also it interchanged, and the crews that ran the Cleveland to Toledo would also run it up to Detroit. They didn't, the Sandusky, Cleveland, and Beach Park, which was pre-Avon Lake, crews would not go farther than Detroit. However, you now have a fast way to get from Cleveland to Detroit. Actually, there were non-stops from Cleveland to Lorain and back, and then you had Sandusky stops. Sandusky was a really big stop because of Cedar Point in the summer, which is an interesting outtake. All of the parks, lake parks and amusement parks in the state of Ohio were created and built by electric railways, with the exception of Cedar Point. And that predated them, and was a very important stop for both the electric rail and the steamships at that time. So, but that was basically the route. That was the main route. Now there were off takes. You could go down to Elyria. You could go to South Lorain, which is very important. You had the steel mill, the Johnson Steel, which made a lot of this area industrial. Think about it. Tom L. Johnson, who eventually became the mayor of Cleveland, probably reputed to be the most successful mayor Cleveland ever had. He brought Cleveland to the fifth largest city in America. He owned the steel mills that were rolling rail, because he also was the inventor of the Jaybird rail, which we'll talk about later. But when the Great Flood of Johnstown, Pennsylvania, destroyed his facilities, he ended up purchasing property in Sheffield Township, had it brought into the city of Lorraine. It became city of Lorraine, essentially in South Lorraine. He built South Lorraine, built a steel mill, and was rolling steel in 11 months from the time he broke ground till he rolled his first steel, which we have a sample of, by the way.
Okay. Actually, that was going to be my next question. I think involves Johnson Steel. How far back does the museum collection go?
I think that the way we look at it, pretty much the inception of Johnson Steel. Now, we have some things that predate that, but Johnson Steel rolled their first track in April of 1895, and we have samples of that track. I would like to say that's our oldest point of reference here in the museum. Interestingly enough, in our conference room, and I'd forgotten about this, we have a wheel from a trolley from the Lorraine trolley line when it was pulled by horses. So that goes back into the 1880s. So.
Okay, I understand. So that the example of the samples of railway that you have, what were they used for?
The rail that was created by Johnson Steel was all for light rail, basically electric railways. It was not for the steam lines of the day. And interestingly, the Jaybird rail, the initial rail that came out, was so important because, again, you didn't have roadways at the time. There's a flange on the inside of the Jaybird that allowed any standard-sized wagon or buggy to be placed on the rails and be pulled down the track by horse or mule or whatever the conveyance was being pulled by. So that was very significant at the day.
In the front of the museum, there is a interurban car. Where did that come from, and how did it get here?
Mm-hmm. That's number 38. We have it outside basically as a signpost so people know how to find the museum. But that unit was sold at auction in 1938, at the end of 1938, and was purchased by the Vermilion Rod and Gun Club. The people pulled it out to Vermilion and used it as their clubhouse until about 10 years ago, and they built a new clubhouse, and then they used it for storage. Dennis Lamont, who is one of my co-authors of the Lakeshore Electric book, learned that it was going to be disposed of or sold, whatever. So I contacted the Rod and Gun Club, purchased it for a very nominal price, had it brought back here, and we restored it and put it out front again as a signpost. It is a baggage car. It's interesting in its history that it was one of only three cars that were built by the employees of the Lakeshore Electric. It was built at the Sandusky shop, and again, it was produced in order to move goods. It was the truck of the day.
Can you describe some of the pictures that you have of the exhibits in the museum?
I'd love to. We created a photo op as you walk into the museum, and it allows you to stand inside a trolley. We named it 167 because 167 is a project that we wish to pursue. And you can stand in there, have your photo taken, blow the whistle, and pull a bell, and get to feel like you're driving a trolley. You're looking at a photo right now that was a passenger trolley, passenger interurban, moving into the Beach Park station. This would be coming from Cleveland and heading points west. This is our interactive trolley exhibit. This is where visitors have an opportunity to actually drive a trolley. You run down the track, watch it speed up, watch the countryside go alongside you, and hopefully you stop before you kill Daisy. We put together a trolley simulator, that we're really proud of, built with volunteers, as was the photo op. Avon Lake people just participating in the community. What you do with the simulator, it's a short run, but it's kind of a fun run. You start running the trolley, watch yourself go down the track. Countryside goes on around you. If you hit the brake, you start to see the smoke coming up, so you don't want to do that. We get her going, and then it's a short run, but just give you an idea of how to operate a trolley. These are original trolley controls, and we had them refitted as, doesn't look like we're going to be able to take care of the cow. We had an accident. Now we'll show you how you do it without killing Daisy. Again, we throttle up, just as they did back in the day. We only get this one up to about 20, 25 miles an hour max. They did in the country get up to 60 miles an hour, and could even do better than that if they had nobody on and they were just trying to see what kind of speed they could do. Now, if you're paying attention and you see it fast enough, you can start braking, and maybe, nope, still didn't get it. Sorry.
Want to do one where we say Daisy?
Yeah, we'll try here. Let me.
We don't want the kids to be disappointed.
They're going to want to kill a cow. Who's kidding who? And you'll see, you saved Daisy. This is a great exhibit that was gifted to us by a Dr. Scott from Bay Village, who created this HO model of Lake Road and Beach Park Station in the 90s. He had donated it to us, to the museum, and Tom Kakuza, also from Bay Village and a neighbor of Dr. Scott, has been kind enough to update it, bring it to life, electrified it, lighted it, and did all the accoutrements that you'll see today, and it really shows you Lake Road in the early 1900s. You're now looking at the HO model of Lake Road, turn of the last century, starting with a farmhouse in Bay Village, going past the Kekik gas station and home, orchards, Avon Barn, Avon Lake Drugstore at the corner of Moore and Lake Road, the water tower at Beach Park Station, which was part of the Lakeshore Electric water plant, and then on to Beach Park Car Barn and Station, where we had many, many people coming through the facility, again up to 5 million a year, bringing commerce, news, and commodities throughout northern Ohio. This model was built by Dr. Scott in the 90s. He went out and measured these buildings, brought them to scale, and built this by hand. He donated it to the museum, and Tom Kakuza in Bay Village made this beautiful exhibit come to life. He re-electrified it, put all the lighting in, did the video on YouTube, did all of the photos that you're seeing, and we just can't thank him enough. This is probably one of two of our key exhibits at this point in time. This is the type of thing we're trying to make happen with a myriad of other subjects and relics that we currently own. Please come to the museum and enjoy learning a little bit about the history of Avon, Avon Lake, and Beach Park. You're looking here at a Lakeshore Electric passenger trolley at the Cleveland Auditorium, 1922 building that housed many, many events over the years, including 2 presidential conventions. Cleveland was a huge hub for Lakeshore Electric, and it was an interchange that allowed them to then travel onto other tracks that were owned by the Everett Moore Syndicate, which was also the founding organization of the Lakeshore Electric. You're looking at a 1937 photo, so a year before the dismantling of the organization. Passenger car number 168, located at across from the old stone church. What's interesting to be noted is the Lakeshore Electric interurban station was at this location right kitty corner from the old stone church. Obviously, you can see this is before the malls were put in.
Who is motorman William Lang, and why is he famous?
Bill Lang was a long-term motorman for the Lakeshore Electric. And in August of 1932, when he was heading west, he saw a young child, 2-year-old, on the tracks in front of him. He didn't have time to stop the unit, so he threw the brakes on and actually went out on the cow catcher scooped up the young child, Lila, and saved her. Unfortunately, while they both lived, he hurt his back severely and was troubled with it the rest of his life. He was quite a large man for the day and fairly athletic, which was beneficial to Lila, obviously. But the nice part of this story is he was recognized by Carnegie and received the Carnegie Life-Saving Medal that year, and it was presented by President Roosevelt, FDR. We have quite a bit of information on Mr. Lang, and this is one of the exhibits. While we already have an exhibit, which we'll share with you now, we're looking to enhance it and find a sponsor to really bring this to life. Very important local history.
Okay, do you have historical photographs of the railway when it was in operation?
Yes. Actually, we have tens of thousands of them, and that's another one of our good problems, I guess. We're looking for people that are interested in going through, again, tens of thousands of these photos and sorting them, and we'd like to end up having them scanned so they can be shared with anyone that's interested. Okay.
And what's the photograph we're looking at now?
This photograph is an early photograph of the Beach Park Station. You're looking at it, the photo was taken from the west. The windows that you're looking at, the two windows are the windows that were in the waiting station and dispatch office. That is now the entry to Rico's Mexican restaurant. And what we did in there is we uncovered the walls, and those windows are available when you walk in their lobby. And I found two photographs that were a photograph that was taken from those windows, and we blew them up and put them back. So you're looking at the same thing that people looked at 120 years ago.
Understand. I think the next photograph is one of what the station looks like right now.
This is a very good photo of the Beach Park Station, again, stop 65. And the building in the foreground was Beach Park Station, all the way from the east side to the west. The end building, which is Tailgaters, was not an original part of the Beach Park Station. But if you can imagine just that first building over to Tailgaters, that is the old car barn and station. Yeah, this photograph is, again, a photo taken from the west, looking east, and you can see how the car barns work. The tracks actually went all the way through the building, and the cars could be stored in there, but also they could be worked on. There were trenches underneath, structural steel, and tracks so that the employees could work on the undercarriages, just like the old garages were many, many years ago. You know, gas stations all had pits that you went down into. Interestingly enough, there's still a pit underneath the old building, and one can actually see the structural steel. Obviously, it's not readily accessible, but you can see the huge structural steel that held up these trolleys. This photo is, again, the great shot of the car barns, but this one's taken from the east looking west. Again, now you know they go all the way through. Cars went around to the outside. This was the major station for the Lakeshore Electric, and from here it went to many other points, went to South Lorraine, went to Elyria, Oberlin, etc., interchanged with some of the other interurbans of the day, and Beach Park saw up to 5 million people a year going through this station. The photo you're looking at now is actually an interior of a car barn. And you can see the structural steel and the pits that allowed the employees to work underneath. And you'll notice at that time, even though there was electricity, you're not seeing a lot of lights. It was mostly lit up by skylights. Okay. Rudy, this photo of passenger car number 69 is really quite interesting because it graphically shows you how luxurious some of these passenger cars were. They weren't all, but some of them were. And the nicest section of the passenger car, as you can see, is the smoker's lounge. The smoker's lounge was cushioned chairs. This thing was obviously not air conditioned, but they were heated. They were electrified. They had bathrooms. They had hot and cold running water, which people didn't have in their homes. They didn't have any of those things. So can you imagine getting on a trolley, going to work, and you're in the luxury of basically a New York hotel of the day. What's interesting in this picture is there's a sign, spitting is prohibited. This is kind of interesting in our COVID era, in that this is a remnant of the Spanish flu era, 1918, 1919, when it was determined that spitting was one of the reasons that the flu was being passed around. Chewing tobacco and spitting and spittoons were everywhere. We have, and in the museum, we have actual spittoons from pre-1918 that were used in the trolleys. This is quite an interesting photo. It's an advertisement, and it's talking about basically it's graphically showing the concern over dangerous railway crossings. Interurban had a lot of accidents, and it was for a couple of reasons. Now this again is when automobiles, this is obviously when automobiles were active and the roadways were going. There were no railroad crossings to speak of. So you had to stop, pay attention if you were a driver or a pedestrian, and a lot of people weren't used to it, so they just didn't pay attention, and there were a lot of accidents. A lot of people were hurt or killed. Rudy, speaking of accidents, this is a photo of not an uncommon event with the interurbans. This track probably was out of line, or someone put something on the track, and the trolley went off. It doesn't look like there were injuries, but particularly since this is a baggage car, so there were no passengers to get hurt. But you can imagine it, just like we have with automobile accidents, there were a lot of accidents, and there wasn't a lot of safety equipment in the day. The photo you're looking at now really should bring a lot of interest in Avon Lake. Again, Avon Lake was an agrarian area. This particular photo they're shipping apples. These are barrels full of apples. Those barrels could have just as well contained anything else. In Avon, at the time, which then became Avon Lake, the main crop again were grapes, and the interurban really allowed the farms to thrive. We have a photo here of the Lakeshore coach lines, which really came into existence in a big way on the same day that the Lakeshore Electric Railway ceased running. A lot of interesting offshoots to this story. The railway was still highly successful, particularly between Cleveland and Lorraine. And the employees, a story that we need to remember, the employees of Lakeshore Electric wanted to purchase that line, just Cleveland to Lorraine, because it was still highly successful. The management of the Lakeshore Electric was also the management of the bus line simultaneously. They would not allow the sale of it because it would hinder the success of the new bus line.
Conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. One of the interesting stories, there was a city official in Cleveland was received from an organization that was owned by General Motors at the time. He received a dealership in order to slow down the traffic, the interurbans coming into Cleveland, because oil, rubber, and oil, rubber, and the auto manufacturers wanted to see the interurbans closed. So they created companies to put them out of business. There was actually a movie made that talks about that. Not clearly, but they talk about that time in history, and it was called Who Killed Roger Rabbit? I've never seen it, but I heard that it's telling that story. It's quite an interesting story. There also was a Supreme Court case which the interurbans finally won some 10 years later, but everything was shut down by that time, so I think they were awarded $1,000. Okay.
I see. Now, you've mentioned the book, the Lakeshore Electric book. Where is that available, and how much does it cost?
The Lakeshore Electric book is $20. It can be purchased at the Avon Lake Historical Society website. It's available at stores that carry the Acadia Rail Series books. I created it as we talked, more of a photo album, if you will, of some of the photos and images that I had collected over the years. And I was fortunate enough to have Dennis Lamont, who is the expert on the subject, co-author it, along with Al Duane, who has recently passed away, who was the historian in Lorraine. It gave me an opportunity to meet these gentlemen and get us moving toward a museum.
Understand. What is the role of the Avon Lake Historical Society now and in the future as far as the museum is concerned?
We're doing as much as we can of an amalgamation of the organizations. Again, we have to keep the Beach Park Railway as an ongoing entity due to commitments we have with the state of Ohio. However, we work hand in hand with the Historical Society, and we're actually doing a formalization merger, whatever it will end up is going to be determined by the attorneys. But we depend on the Historical Society. I'm a member of the Historical Society, and Beach Park Station, the museum, will just be added to the locations where Avon Lake shares the history, along with the Folger House and the Peter Miller House Museum.
Understand. What other preparations do you have to do on the exhibits before you open?
We have, and we'll share some of the exhibits we currently have, but we have a whole list of exhibits that we really want to put together. We need volunteers and sponsors that have interest in some of the stories we wish to tell and share with the community. We, as you can see, we have a number of exhibits that we brought to fruition, but we have many, many more articles that really need to be cleaned up and brought to life, so we can share them with the community and with the public in general.
So you're hoping for some more volunteers to help you with that?
Yes, and we're looking for specific volunteers. We're looking for volunteers that are interested in some of the projects which I'll give you a list, which I'm giving you a listing, and you can share with with your viewers. Also, we're interested in people that have stories that would fit into the museum, about the community, about rail, about anything with Avon Lake, that they think that would be important, and our board agrees, and that they could then fit into the whole museum.
Tell us again when you think the museum is going to open and where it's located in general.
Well, we've been slowed down, as everything has, with this COVID. If things clear up and we can do it, we're hoping to have this, we're looking forward to having the museum open in spring, so we can restart our elementary school programs, tours, and also bring in the general public at that time. And it'll be, of course, those type of schools and organizations that come in and bring tours, we don't charge. It'll be a nominal charge. We haven't finalized what admission will be, but it certainly will be nominal. We should have a formal schedule again in spring, God willing, and no more COVID flare-ups.
Understand. To kind of sum up, is there anything else that you'd like to say about the museum?
Yes, we're really thrilled that we're finally getting to the point where it's becoming a reality. There's been an awful lot of local supporters, volunteers, actually too many that I should start naming in this particular venue. But we started with an old retired bowling alley, and I think that we now have the first part really coming together. We're happy to share it with everyone, and we're really looking for ideas on how to make this an integral part of the city.
I agree. This is a wonderful venue. You have lots of interesting exhibits, and I would urge all Avon Lakers and surrounding communities to when it is open, to come and visit. It's an educational experience as well as an interesting one, an entertaining one as well. Thank you very much, Tom. I would like to thank everyone for watching this show. Please give us feedback on the show. If you have any comments or questions, our email addresses will appear on the bottom of the screen. You can contact us anytime. If you'd like to be on the show, or if you know some interesting people, have them contact us or give us their contact information, and we'll follow up. Thank you very much. You have a good day.